Irrespective of what people say because of their own technical and business reasons, C++ was, is, and in the near future will remain a great programming language. Yes, it is. It's a great programming language, and the capability provided by C++. And if you are a very good programmer, a programmer who thinks, programmer who want to craft everything on their own, C++ is a language of your choice. It's great. Whether people want to try it because it's great or want to avoid it because of the high learning curve, there is no denying that C++ is a great programming language, and most of the things we use in our day-to-day lives, including games, databases, scripting engines, most of them, if not all, have C++ in it. And the C++ language has evolved a lot. It's become a modern version of a programming language called modern C++. And in this video, I'm going to talk about things in modern C++ we should never use, even though the language supports it. We should never make use of it because we want to code our things in modern C++. Now, before I go ahead and talk about what all things you should not use, I must admit there is a serious flaw in C++ from my own perspective. It's my personal opinion. The serious flaw is C++ is backward compatible, and it's a flaw. Yeah, you heard it right. It's a flaw because this prevents C++ from becoming a truly modern programming language because of the backward compatibility, which means even if you take the modern C++ compiler, it will compile your previous C++ written in maybe 20, 25 odd years back. And even though it may be required for business continuity reasons, but still, it's a baggage. It's an old baggage which C++ is carrying on its own shoulders, and that's hurting the language. So, in my personal opinion, the next version of modern C++ should and must get rid of all the baggages. But whether that happens or not, we as a programmer can take care of it and make sure that we are not using those baggages in our modern C++ code. And today we are going to talk about some of them. The list is huge, but I'm going to touch upon some of them. So the first thing we should never use is the memory allocation using new and deletion using delete. We should get rid of malloc, free, new and delete from any C++, including the legacy code whenever we get a chance. Instead, we should use smart pointers. Smart pointers will help us to make sure that we are worried about memory but less, right? It can take care of lots of things when it goes out of the scope. So memory allocation and deallocation, outsource it to STL, Standard Template Library, shared pointer, unique pointer, or maybe even weak pointer. The second thing which you must not use is virtual inheritance. Believe me, guys, it's one of the most unnecessary, unwanted, and God knows what all I can say about it, feature in C++ programming language. And this is created specifically for one particular use case. And think about it, this diamond inheritance use case, right? It has created for this. So this is the only case in C++ programming language where the language is being tweaked to insert something called virtual base pointer to handle this diamond inheritance scenario. Rather than just saying that what the hell you are trying to do, you can do it in a better way, use composition or use some other way of inheritance. You don't need to use it. The language creators decided to create something like this. What can I say about it? This is most unwanted thing in my opinion, and there is nothing, let me repeat, there is nothing you can't do without using virtual inheritance. So just get rid of it. Just get rid. Okay, this is given a choice, I will wipe it off from the language as well as from the curriculums. And interviewers like these kind of things. If you are going for an interview, you have to learn it, but this is unwanted. But again, a disclaimer, guys, whatever I am saying for your own learning. Please don't use these things in interviews, because interviews requires you to be correct politically in terms of the language, like what is virtual inheritance, you have to say about it. But from the learning perspective, think about it as a totally useless things. Never use this. So the third thing is operator overloading. Operator overloading was included in C++ to make sure that, you know, the objects can behave like a mathematical entities, mathematical constructs. I don't think why that was needed. C++ objects are not meant to be mathematical constructs. You cannot compare, object with greater than, less than, and all those things you do with the operator overloading, right? You cannot add objects, you cannot subtract objects, you cannot multiply objects. You are not doing all these things. What you are instead doing is that in the object there is a variable, right, of type int, float, or whatever, or a string you want to concatenate with plus, or integer you want to sum it with plus, multiply with, with numbers, right? Integer multiply with some number or itself. This is all what you are trying to do. I fail to understand why we needed to have something like operator overloading for the objects, which abstracts what we are actually trying to do, which all variables we are trying to do, multiplication or, addition, subtraction, etc. Rather, we should directly go there and use that particular variable, create that as a structure, and maybe compare those variables, add those variables. STL has a very good sample like STD greater or less, right? We can pass anything and we can compare those things. Why can't we just compare the variables which we need to compare? Why can't we just concatenate the variables which we need to concatenate directly, rather than including something, a functionality of overall capability of summing, multiplying, dividing in an object? Makes no sense. Totally useless. Increases the complexity of your code, complexity of your program, reduces the maintainability of your code, and I don't think there is anything you can't do without using this. Get rid of this. You don't need to use this, okay? Again, this is for learning purpose, not for your interview purpose, okay? Fourth thing, raw arrays and pointers. You don't need to make use of them. If at all you need to use pointers, maybe just see if references can help you over there instead of pointers. Raw arrays not needed. Use STL, use vectors, use DQ, use STD array STL. Don't use raw arrays. Okay, you can get rid of many problems by using STL containers than raw arrays and pointers. You don't need that. And pointers are something, you want to look into the memory. Why you want to look into the memory? To look at the value at the memory. Why you go through that kind of indirection, right? Use references if you do not want to copy, and just access the variable directly instead of looking into the memory and then looking into a variable, and that kills the object oriented perspective. Think about it. If you create a class with a private member variable, private int I, and you create the object, take the object pointer, okay, you cannot change the variable because compiler will not allow you, but with the pointer you can go to the address and change the variable. Doesn't make any sense, all those things. This is just giving a bad name to C++. Of course, there might be some use cases where it is required, but in general, just get rid of it. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is macros. Don't use macros. It serves no purpose. Use metaprogramming constructs of C++. Okay, you don't need to use macros. You have STL, you have Boost library. Don't use macros. There is no purpose you are going to solve by making compiler differentiation. Apart from minor use cases where you are compiling your code in Linux and Windows, same code, and there must be some differentiation that needs to be there. But don't use it for configuration of your features or something like that. Doesn't make any sense. Okay, it will just increases the complexity of your code. Macro is supported, it will remain supported, but all those fancy macro where macro converts to a function, just get rid of it. Use metaprogramming constructs. Now I have talked about what all things which you should not use, but Before closing this video, I'm going to talk about what is that one thing you must use. And that one thing is STL, Standard Template Library. A modern C++ is modern only and only because of standard template library, because STL consists of three things: containers, algorithms, and iterators. Containers can help you to keep any type of data, repeat any type of data. Algorithms are there for most of the things. You can create your own algorithms, and iterators are there to make sure that you can use your algorithms in a generic way in most of the data types. So your program should start with STL and end with STL. So that's all I wanted to talk to you about the modern C++ and what are things you should not use and one thing you must use. Thank you all. Thanks for watching. We will meet again. Until the next time we meet, good day, goodbye. You take care.